Hey folks, welcome back to the Portable Gamer. Welcome back to American Truck Simulator, and welcome to, we are on the road. We are somewhere between Ely, Nevada and San Simon, Arizona. Let's take a look where we are. Let's see, just outside of Vegas. We're going right through Vegas, down into Kingman. Made that trip the other way many times, up through the Flag, through Kingman and into Vegas. Not in a truck. On a motorcycle most times, and then how far do we have to go? Not too far. Maybe? Zoom out. Pretty far. We're about a third of the way there. So let's get rolling, and we'll go from there. I believe at the end of the last episode we did get fuel. Let's take a look. Yep, we're good on fuel. We don't have to sleep for 3 hours. I'm sorry, 6 hours game time, which should be about 12 or 15 minutes real time. So we'll get rolling. There we go. We'll get rolling, and I figured instead of sleeping, concentrating, instead of sleeping, and there goes the voice straight away. I don't get it. Instead of sleeping now, right over there, instead of sleeping now, let's drive till we have to sleep and we can get a little bit more daylight in. Because, you know, we spend a lot of time on the road at night. I don't mind. Doesn't make for a good video. Right, here we go. So Saturday for me, you'll see this probably today, Saturday, or possibly Sunday. I try to post these on Saturday, but my schedule's been all kind of crazy wonky lately. So things have been a bit off. But, so it goes. So, news, finally news. I just saw it was announced on the 25th. Is today the 25th? 26th? I don't know. But it was just announced recently. The next state for ATS is going to be Washington. I have to say, surprised. Not entirely. I mean, I knew it would be connected. So that left us with Washington or the Mountain States or Texas. All three of them had things that sort of, made them good candidates, and all three of them had things that made them sort of not good candidates. And I guess in order, or in reverse order. There we go. Find a good gear, lock in the cruise control, and we're all set. And of course, we then come to a road event. But that's good. I like that. I like the road events. I like in 1.33, I like the actual road closures. I think that is super cool. All right. So yeah, all three of them had things that made a lot of sense. All three of them had things that didn't make any sense at all. And in reverse order, Texas is massive. I feel like that's going to be an undertaking. That's the direction I would have gone in, honestly, if it was me. If I was making the game, I would have gone to Texas. But I understand why they may not. It's gigantic. And then on the other side, you've got the Mountain States. Was that an old Falcon or GTX that just passed us? Love the old cars. That is Jazzy Cat's Classic Cars pack, I believe. So the Mountain States. I mean, I'm partial to those areas in real life. I've lived in Colorado and Montana and Utah. It's fantastic. It's gorgeous. I don't know how well it would work for trucking. There's not a ton of cities. I mean, there's plenty of cities in Colorado as an example, but there's really only a couple big ones. Or from one angle, maybe really only one big one. You know what I'm saying. And then Washington is the third one. And this is going to sound kind of weird to say, but my only, I don't know, beef with going with Washington is it's very similar to Oregon. Oh. Thought we had a little bit more room. Concentrating. Is it just an old Mustang? I can't tell. It's something. Oh, should we start again? Should we? Oh, I don't do that very often. I'm not happy right now. Not happy right now. So Washington looks very similar to Oregon, I have to say. I was curious if they were going to go that route, and they did. But it's got me thinking. It's got me thinking. ETS, I believe, will continue to expand out into Russia and down into Spain. And I believe at some point they'll go into North Africa and all the way around the Med. And I think it really is going to be European Truck Simulator. When we think of Europe, or at least when I think of Europe, I think of Western Europe. But, you know, we're east into Poland, and we got the Baltic states now, and you know what I mean? It really is Europe. It's all of Europe. It's not just Western Europe. Germany, France, Britain, etc. So it's American Truck Simulator, and I guess because we sort of, I don't want to say nickname, but I don't know. When you say America, you think of United States, or at least I do. But what if it was the Americas, you know? And I think by going into Washington, here's my theory, here's my idea. By going into Washington, we open up the possibility of going straight into Canada. And if they do the same thing in the south, because we already go all the way down to San Diego, which is on the Mexican border. If we go all the way south, right, we could theoretically have proper American Truck Simulator instead of a US Truck Simulator. It would be North America. And I think that would be super cool. And it sort of continues the theme of European Truck Simulator, right? Which is all of Europe, right? You know what I mean? So, I don't know. Maybe that's the direction they're going in. Now, certainly they could have done that already because we're already on the Mexican border, and then Arizona and New Mexico and Texas, obviously, if they had gone with Texas. We could have gone down into Mexico. But I wonder if that's the direction they're going to take it in and have like a true, you know what I mean? A true American Truck Simulator for all of the Americas. I wonder. I'd be into that. I know there's the Coast to Coast mod, and I know there's a Canada mod. I know there's a Mexico mod. They don't do it for me, you know, compared to something like Pro Mods. I feel like the quality is just not there. So it really doesn't, you know, I don't run any of them. I've tried them all, and it's just, there's nothing like Pro Mods, man. I don't know how they do it, but the quality is not nearly the same. And so for me, it's not worth it. But I feel like if SCS did it, base game, if they took us into Canada, if they took us into Mexico, I feel like the quality would be there, and it really would be, it would be worth it. And I would be totally into that. I think it'd be fun to haul something from, you know, up in the Northwest Territories or the Yukon all the way down to, I mean, ideally all the way down to like Panama. Concentrating. I'm really sorry about that. I hate when that happens. And I mean, changing topics, I really have been thinking, because the time that I've spent in co-op in the Division is the most time I think in my life that I've ever spent in multiplayer on any video game. And it I guess there's just really different ways to think about gaming, and I do play very realistically because I spend so much of my gaming time in sim. and it really lends itself to realistic play. It's a place where realistic play makes sense and fits. You know, I mean, something like the Division. You know, in a session, you kill like hundreds of people, and that is probably not something that you want to be too serious about or too realistic about. But in multiplayer, I very often find myself thinking like, you know, we're not playing very realistically here. We're not being very tactically sound. You know, these aren't real small unit tactics. We're not being efficient or effective. But then I keep in mind that the person I'm playing with is wearing like a Santa suit with a Pennywise mask and a sombrero, you know, and he's got a pink Uzi. So they're just having fun with it. You know, they're just having a good time playing a video game. They're not playing realistically. They're not even trying to. So that is something, you know, when I think about how fun it would be to like plan a trip from the Yukon all the way down to Central America, if it goes that way. You know, I think that would be a lot of fun for me. I like to play realistically like that. But who knows? I can definitely see it going that way. And if the franchise continues long enough, and if we as a species continue and gaming continues to be gaming, and they don't release sex robots and everybody just stops gaming and stops interacting with other people at all. But if it goes that route, I could see in time that this would be like global truck simulator. And I do think, I've talked about this in another video, but I could see Japan. I think that would be fantastic. Japanese truck simulator. India, I guess, is a huge market for the sim. And what's going on up here? Sir? India, I guess, is a huge market. There's a lot of players from India and Turkey, so I could see an Indian truck simulator. You know, there's a lot of different directions they could take it in. But like I said, if the franchise continues long enough, maybe at some point it's like global truck simulator and really all major regions of the world are represented. I think that would be fantastic too. So we'll see. You never know. But Washington is next. That's the gist. That's the takeaway. There's a bar in Kingman called Cattleman's. If you're ever in the area, stop by and have yourself a beer. I'm not, when I say stop by, I'm not saying like I'll be there or I'm affiliated with it or anything. I didn't mean like that, but yeah, check that place out. There's also a Cattleman's in Missoula, Montana. You definitely want to check that place out. Missoula in general is pretty dope, but Cattleman's in Missoula that's something else, man. It used to be, back in the day, that was like, it was an actual like cattleman's club. It was for ranchers, and now it's just a bar. Anybody can go in, but it's like a lot of towns have a lot of big towns have a bar called Chiefs, and that's where the firemen hang out. Fireman bar, and same thing. You know, anybody can just walk in. It's not like private membership or anything, but when you walk in, you definitely know you are not a fireman. So when you walk into Cattleman's, nobody makes you feel like you're not a cattle rancher. I think maybe back in the day, though, that would have been the case, like 30, 40 years ago, if you just went strolling in there. But it's funny how towns evolve. I lived in Grand Junction, Colorado, and spent a lot of time in Telluride, right over the mountain there. And Telluride in the 70s and into the 80s was just a mining town. There really wasn't a ton of, there was a resort. Wow. There was a resort, but it was not what it is now. It wasn't, you know, multi-million-dollar homes and celebrities and festivals, and it wasn't like that at all. There were still, shoot, man, I lived in Moab, Utah, a little town called Moab, Utah. And same thing, into the 70s and into the 80s, it was just a mining town, uranium mining town in the middle of nowhere. People still walking around with sidearms on their hip. And Telluride used to be the same way. So in the 70s and 80s, as the skiing got, well, not better. I mean, the skiing is the skiing. It's just you need a hill and you need snow. But as the resort got better, and more people came in, there was some tension between like these hard rock miners, gold miners, and copper miners in some cases, and these ski bums and skiers. You know, it's not good or bad. It's just a fact. The ski crowd does bring a bit of baggage with it as far as stereotypes and reputation and that sort of thing. So it's, if you wanted to talk about like two groups of people that really don't have a lot in common and probably are going to have some tension between them, it would be hard rock gold miners and skiers. Skiers tend to be outdoorsy and wealthier, and I don't want to say necessarily on the liberal side, but they tend to be more environmentally conscious, I suppose, as most outdoors people are. And I think that can put you at odds with people like gold miners. Man, Colorado is beautiful. It is arguably the most beautiful state that I've ever been in. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in anywhere in the world. And and it's weird when you're out in the backcountry in Colorado, all over the mountains, you'll see these just massive yellow triangles of, I don't know, lifelessness. And if you look close at the top of that triangle, you'll see a mine, an old mine, closed. But those are mine tailings, and they're extremely toxic, heavy metals and arsenic and sulfuric acid and all kinds of stuff. And it's what's left over after you process soil that you pull out of a mine and get the gold out of it. And they would just dump it. You know, when you're talking about in the late 1800s and early 1900s, of course you did. You know, there was no environmental regulation. People didn't give a shit about the world around them. They just wanted that gold, that sweet, sweet gold. And you see this everywhere, and that's, you know, when you think about, I'm not trying to get political on you, but when you think about things like the Environmental Protection Agency that a lot of people feel is, you know, not needed, and you realize what people do when there are no restrictions, mostly they just make money. And that's fine. I like money. I like capitalism. But I also like the mountains. And I think, you know, what would those mountains look like if there were, slow it down here, if there were no environmental laws, you know, and I'm talking like Mogadishu, like no rules, no laws, everybody can do whatever they want. And it's difficult for me to think that many corporations or people trying to make money would really worry about things like how they dispose of their mine tailings. You know, if you can just dump it, they just dump it. You know, why would you do anything else? So it's interesting to see that and realize that as beautiful as Colorado is, it's really got some big scars. And you can find whole mining towns up in the mountains, ghost towns in that area up around Telluride, Ouray, over the Imogene Pass. Man, I rode my motorcycle back and forth over Imogene Pass so many times. It's so there's a little town called Ouray, gorgeous. It used to go ice climbing there. It's one of the only dedicated ice climbing parks in North America. Spent a lot of time ice climbing there. And then in the summertime, I would ride my dirt bike over the hill from Ouray, straight over Imogene Pass into Telluride and back. And there's a couple ways to get around. You go over Red Mountain Pass. You can take the long way around, down through Durango, out into Utah and back. There's like many different ways to do it, but the shortest distance between Ouray and Telluride is just to go straight over Imogene, and it's unbelievable. It's fun. It's a little bit scary because it's kind of isolated, and it's not super technical riding, but it's definitely a combination of like some ticky-tack technical stuff, not trial stuff, but you know, you got to have your wits about you as a dirt bike rider, and then some more, you know, wide open, faster sort of gravel stretches. And at all times while I was up there, I was aware that like if I wad this thing up, I'm going to it's going to cost me a lot of money, because just getting me and the bike out is probably going to be $15,000 or $18,000, because they would almost inevitably bring a helicopter in, and that, man, the meter starts running pretty high when you need to be medevaced. And then the bike they would need to take out, they're not just going to leave it there, not because they care about me, like, oh, you know, we're worried about you and your motorcycle, sir, but like, you can't just leave that laying in the landscape. So that would need to be lifted out, and yeah, it would be incredibly expensive. And if it was a bad injury, that would be a mess. You know, like if I was ambulatory and sitting up and talking to the rangers, that's bad enough. But if I was like knocked out or something, that'd be a hot mess. You know, the other one I used to do, I lived in Grand Junction, and I used to ride the Kokopelli Trail to Moab. I had a big old DRZ 400, which is a dual sport bike, and the reason I got it rigged like that is it had registration, license plate, turn signals, and everything, so I could ride it on the street. And there are some sections of highway, places like riding from Grand Junction down to Ouray to get on the iMachine, or from riding from Grand Junction down to Fruta to get on the Kokopelli. I would need to ride on the highway. So I got a legal bike, but then the mods I had made to it were not street legal. I had this big, is it MSR, MRS? I had this big 5-gallon Enduro fuel tank, which was polymer, and that is not Department of Transportation legal. Like, you cannot have a plastic gas tank on a street legal vehicle in the United States. But I had this big old moose belly plate, skid plate. I had these big burly radiator guards, and the thing was it was all tricked out for desert riding. Hang on, one more. There it is. It was all tricked out for desert riding, so I could do Kokopelli Trail on one fuel tank. And I crashed out in the desert a couple times. Man, I rode the Kokopelli so many times. I rode it in daylight, I rode it at night, I rode it after there had been some bad flash flooding that came through and like wiped out the whole trail, or at least whole sections of it, and you're just trying to pick your way through flood debris, trying to see like where the trail is. But I wadded it up a couple times out in the desert, you know, like absolutely flipped the thing over the handlebars, rang my bell, the whole deal. And it's fun, man. It's a fun way to live. I would recommend it to everybody. But it's the sort of thing that you look back on. You know, I don't know, man. Life in the mountains, doing things in the mountains, it's awesome. Would not trade it for the world. But it's easy to take a step back and look at it and be like, what the hell am I doing, man? This is so incredibly dangerous. And it really is, you know. But something's going to kill you, you know. Something's going to kill you someday. And it may as well be doing something that you love in a beautiful place. And I've been fortunate enough to do that. And motorcycles, mountain biking, skiing, snowboarding, rock climbing, ice climbing, mountaineering, all of it, man. I've been really fortunate. Oh, and even just traveling. I guess, well, I mean, should we include that? Traveling in undeveloped nations or developing nations? You know, I don't know, it feels dangerous. Should we include that? Is that disrespectful to people in those places? But either way, yeah, done that too. I've done a lot of solo traveling in developing nations in Southeast Asia, and you're not supposed to do that. Man, I used to ride that DRZ. When I lived in Los Angeles, I would ride that thing south on the 5 to San Ysidro, to the border. I know, I should have pulled in earlier. I would ride that thing south to the border and then ride out across the desert by myself out to Mike's. And if you know what Mike's is in Baja, Mike's Sky Ranch, I won't tell you about it. I'll leave you to Google that. And you know what? It may even be closed by now, because that whole area, I mean, at the time, you could ride solo down to like Rosarita. You know, you could ride down the west coast of Baja and just go down to the little resort towns and, you know, post up and have yourself a nice time. Go by yourself, go with friends. You can just be on a motorbike. But this was years ago, and now I feel like it's not the same. But I know that whole area up around the border, up where Mike's is just like overrun with people doing bad things. And when I say overrun, I'm not, again, not being political and making no commentary or observation about a border wall or a need for one or anything else. But the fact is, there are some bad people out and about in that area. And I don't know if I would make that trip today. But I certainly did it enough times back in the day. I spent a lot of weekends just driving out to Mike's. Right, I see a sign coming up here. Yeah, I think we're getting to a little town. I hope we are. So we do need to sleep. And we're at 26 minutes too. Man, time flies when I make these videos for you. It really does. I like it. Okay, so we're gonna pull over the first place that I can find, or 30 minutes. And I'll just find a place off camera. And I'm still, yeah, if you're wondering, I'm still really upset at myself for clipping that car. I was cutting it in, and I was trying to pivot the camera at the same time, and I feel like I should have just left the camera where it was and focused on getting it cut. And I didn't, and I whacked a car. Right, I see, looks like a little place to sleep up here, I think. Is that gonna get bigger and turn into a little bed? I believe it is. I believe it is. Okay, cool. So we'll get pulled in there. Traffic circle in America? Well, sort of. I know. Oh, sir. This is fuel too. We don't need fuel, but we'll certainly pull in here and get some sleep. Although, I can't tell if both icons are there. Looking at my GPS, I think they are. Let's at least get pulled in. Yeah, rest area. Perfect. Well, oh! Okay. There we go. Then I got all panicked and couldn't find my gear. We might have to drive over this curb here. Yeah, right. I'll get this squared away. I'll get this squared up and pretty off camera. But for now, let's pull it right in there. Screenshot, maybe? Maybe. Let's call it, folks. Thanks for stopping back to check out The Portable Gamer. Thanks for joining us for another episode of American Truck Simulator. And we'll see you next time. Take care now.